Hello,
Gene,
hello.
hello. Welcome, folks, to the Bioactive Nexus. We're back live again, streaming on LinkedIn here. And
I'm Professor Gene, and we're glad to be back home after our trip
yes,
to SupplySide West in Las Vegas. Not that it wasn't a good trip. It
no,
was.
it was almost like every time you go to the show, it's a little depressing. You feel depressed a little bit because you have to leave everybody that some people you only see once a
I
year.
know, I know.
I hate that part, but because there's such a connection there. We had a great show last week in the press room. That was the first time for us doing something like that, and we had 7 outstanding industry leaders on the show. We're going to
I
kind of
know.
go
That was
through.
great.
Yeah, we're going to do a little debrief today on supply side from our perspective. We didn't do that at the end of the show last week, frankly, because we didn't have time. But we're going to do that today. Gene and I will talk about that. And we'll give you some highlights from the show last week, too, which is very cool. If you haven't watched it yet, it's already posted up there on our website and YouTube channel. So go check it out. So, Gene,
Yes.
so we had some awesome guests, man. So,
I was very pleased with the mix of guests we had. They weren't just awesome guests, but it was a good
that's what I was
mix.
going to say.
I expected to hear, when we asked them the questions, I expected to hear sort of, consistently the same thing. Like 2019 at Expo West was the CBD show, and I expected everybody to be, and we got such a broad range of different opinions. It was fantastic. I love that. A lot of insight too from these people.
Yeah, it's really cool. And, one of the things that I noticed from my perspective is I didn't get a huge chance to walk around the show floor and check every new thing out. That's not the reason I was there this time, but a lot of networking. I had a lot of meetings, like a lot of people.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I noticed there was, and you were working the booth for Nutrient, of course.
Right.
Plus doing the breakfast thing. But you know what? One thing I noticed, a lot of new people, first timers for supply side.
Yeah, there were a lot. I spoke to a number of them just at our booth, and domestic and international for sure. So I think there's a lot of people who are just interested in becoming part of the industry and joining the industry.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased to see that they're going to SupplySide. It's a good trade show to go to if that's what you want to do.
I've been saying this actually for a long time, and I know they're going to change the name and branding. They already changed the Natural Products Insider to
SupplySide Global instead of SupplySide West.
And I've been saying that for years. And actually, people would say didn't believe me. I said, no, this is like the largest international show. You realize that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got into almost an argument with somebody. They were saying VitaFoods Europe.
I was there. I was there in Geneva earlier in the year, and I can tell you it was a great show. It was a big show.
Yeah.
But not as big as SupplySide. Not as big.
No, it's not as big. And it started much, SupplySide's been around longer. And, of course, Expos, I put VitaFoods kind of like an expo in Asia and Europe. There's more like that. But really, SupplySide West is the best global international show. We have a huge presence from companies from India, from China. In fact, remember Daniel Lin talked about that at the end of the show when we talked with her. She talked about how that trend, she was calling that trend years ago, decades ago, that, we're going to have, it's not going to be just U.S. anymore. It's going to be international.
It's going to be all over the place. That's right.
And we've been international for years. So this is a long time coming to rebrand the show, making it global.
Right. And to me, SupplySide is not just the biggest show. Arguably, just in terms of sheer size, Natural Products Expo West is a bigger show. But if you're focused on ingredients and nutraceuticals, this one far outshines Expo West. And to me, is the place. If you want to see real innovation,
this is the place.
That's the place to go.
Yeah, I agree. And especially if you're a product innovator, all the latest, and we heard that from the show. In fact, Payleen Thorogood from Radical talked about that. She said, I made some notes here. anyway, she's pleased to see the science and the clinicals being done, not only ingredients but also products, which is I'm super excited about seeing that. I've been touting that from my soapbox for a long time. We need to be doing science on the products as a whole, guys. Okay. I remember some of the companies in our industry years ago were just doing on the ingredients. That was big, and everybody would take that branded ingredient into their products, and everybody have that. But then, because people didn't want to differentiate themselves, product brands were just putting a little bit of it in there just so they could put the label in there. And
fairy dusting it,
fairy dusting it, and I mean, I think we still have some of that going on. But to be honest with you,
we still have a fair amount of it going on.
But I think where the trend of where things are going, as you and I know, with the science, more and more science being done, it's going to be harder and harder for product brands or companies that launch products in this industry if they aren't really doing the science.
Yep. It's got to happen, and it's happening more and more now on finished goods, and certainly a lot more with raw materials. At Nutraland, I'm currently coordinating like 5 different clinical studies, so it's like pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And I think just some highlights of, jump in here, man, of whatever highlights you want to talk about here. But a few things that stood out for me from our show last week. One was what Daniel Lim talked about when we asked people, what was the
cool, interesting thing you saw here. And we were thinking in terms of ingredients or trends and things like that. And she came back with something different.
Yeah, no, she came back and said it's the relationships.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, it's like I said in the beginning there, it's like getting on the plane and heading back. It's like, yeah, we're going home and that's great, but it was a little depressing. You wish you could see all these people on a regular basis, right? And interact with everybody in a regular basis. And of course,
it's true. Yeah. And the whole thing about relationships, when she said that really struck me was, I think about it when I've worked for finished good companies or I've worked for manufacturers, there would be sales reps that would come from raw material companies that I develop a relationship with because I had a lot of respect for them. I liked them. They were smart.
Yeah.
And if they left and they went somewhere else, I followed them. I would look and see what they had because it was the relationship that made the difference. And there's people in this industry that every time I see them, like we had dinner, you were at that dinner that we had on, was it Tuesday night, I think?
Tuesday night.
Yeah. And I saw Mark Blumenthal there from American Botanical Council. And I've known him since the year 1. And I said to him, Mark, every time I see you, I get just a little bit happy. It gives me a good feeling. It's just like so much memory, so much good stuff that I just see him and I smile. And to have relationships in this business, people that you can talk to, people that you can, that you have that shared common background, and they're a resource for you, you're a resource for them, and they provide you with some real value and at a number of levels. I mean, Danielle Lynn is another one like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And her point about that, not only the relations, even in the beginning, were so valuable, but she believes it's stronger now. And one of the trends I think that she talked about that she said is next gen, and I'm totally aligned with this, and that is, we moved from, this, everyone expects the science now, she said, before that we weren't doing the science. But now I think we've tipped the scale, and certainly with discussions with Jeff Chen from Radical and Paylene Thorogood and others we've talked to that are doing that. In fact, I think that's a good point to talk about our next bioactive breakdown, actually, which is going to be on the revolution and evolution of science in our industry. So that's going to be fun. But anyway, what Danielle was saying was really profound, I think. And she talked about where we moved to this, we expect that now. Now the next gen is moving into science and spirituality and elevating consciousness. And as we get into sustainability and really being concerned about what we're doing with the planet, I think is really important.
We have to. I mean, it's one of the things, not to tout too much about the company I work for, but it's one of the things I like about Nutriland. Our
Yeah.
tagline is "Good for you, good for the planet." We're really, really about that, and I think that more and more companies are getting into that. And if you look at the trends, you look at consumer trends, they care about that. That's
Yeah.
important. And
Yeah.
so I'm pleased that that's a trend. And so, I think you're right on the
Yeah.
money with that one.
Yeah. And for those who don't know or aren't following me in the broader scope, that's my whole persona is about spirit meeting science, the scientist on a spiritual journey. And that's when I started my other podcast, Where Spirit Meets Science. And you can go to my website at williamdavidclark.com and you can start following there for that. But I agree with Danielle. This is something I've been doing. My professional and spiritual careers kind of brought together in that sense. And I think here's the reason I think that it's now being accepted on a certain level, because it seems like everyone I talk to now in the industry, new people coming in, they're thinking this way. So Danielle's if I had someone who's been predicting trends in our industry, Danielle's probably been the dead on the money every time. Yeah. And I think this trend with what she's talking about is really cool. So I'm happy to be a part of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what else stood out for you, Gene, from our discussions last week from the folks?
Well, one of the things one thing I expected to hear, and we did hear, was that whole kind of rise in interest on peptides. Especially one particular peptide, the GLP-1, which everybody's so excited about because of its application in semaglutide, Ozempic, that kind of thing, and the effectiveness that it's had for so many people in terms of weight reduction, helping to reduce appetite. It slows gastric emptying, and people are full longer and eat less. Now, of course, that, as we know, has led our industry into saying what nutraceuticals have that GLP-1 effect, and so everybody's going for that. And it's something that I'd like to do. We talked about the possibility of doing a deeper dive on, but I find it interesting because I think most people don't understand the difference between being a GLP-1 agonist,
hitting GLP-1 is a receptor, right?
Right. So you need something that hits that and is an agonist and hits the receptor, versus something that stimulates the actual protein, the production of that protein. It's a receptor, but it's a protein too.
Right.
And just because you stimulate the production of GLP-1 doesn't mean that you're going to have the agonist effect and it's going to have the appetite suppressant. Like everybody was saying, oh, berberine is your natural GLP-1. Yeah, but you could take that till the cows come home and it won't make you full. It doesn't work that way, even though it has some. So
it's a different mechanism of action. Yeah,
entirely. Even though GLP-1, so GLP-1 stimulant, GLP-1 agonist, not the same thing. But in any case, I think that whole rise in peptides and that whole interest is really, I think, a trend that is happening. And so I found that to be interesting.
Actually, it's been going on for the last 5 years, actually. And I remember,
you're right.
And I remember even before Ozempic has been around for a long time. So I don't know what made it go viral. It's a peptide that targets GLP-1. So, and it's very effective. However, what we do see happening, there's a couple of points I wanted to make here. So yes, it's been 4 or 5 years that we've been seeing this trend with peptides. Actually, there's another company called Nutraceuticals that is doing that. They're looking at peptides from different plants and stuff. But I think, as Tom Arts pointed out, this is entering, and I said this literally 4 years ago, because when I was with Sanofi, we were looking at Nutraceuticals and what they were doing, their platform. And my first question was, okay, we're entering a little bit of a regulatory gray area here. So, so I think he called out the same thing in our show last week. For sure, it's going to be, again, I think the industry needs to be proactive, just like Jeff Chen was talking about with functional beverages. We need to be really proactive from the regulatory side so we don't end up with regulations. I mean, we look what happened with CBD, right? The Farm Bill gets passed in 2018. only for industrial legalized industrial use of hemp. That's it. It didn't say you could go take CBD out of hemp and go put it in supplement products or foods. Okay, but I feel like the industry is already eager to be more proactive than regulators, of course. But
Right.
there should be a framework. I think we're going to see it come in the next few years around the peptide thing, because if you think about it, peptides are obviously natural ingredients. Our bodies,
Right.
we take branched chain amino acids, which are small peptides and stuff like that. And there's collagen peptides. But then when you're talking about isolating specific peptides,
There's the crux, I think.
right?
What we need to do is, if you're talking about a peptide from, let's say it's some plant or some natural material, and
Yeah,
it's a peptide, it's just broken down, hydrolyzed, whatever, but it's still arguably a very natural material. I think it's cleaner. I think there's some manufactured peptides and some real isolates
yeah,
where they're going, and that's where we got to be careful. You know,
yeah, yeah. Are we designing drugs from plants in a different way with modern technology, right? So
yeah,
you could argue that the protein that they're hydrolyzing, breaking, and a protein is long chains of amino acids,
right.
but so how is that different from collagen that they break down into by molecular weight of different groups of peptides that have different therapeutic benefits and now
I I think
specific peptides?
I think the way that it's different is kind of the application. Like a lot of times, it's
Yeah,
just used for skin health and younger looking skin, and
right.
nobody's overly concerned about that. Little more tricky when you start talking about joint health, but I think when you start getting into some of these other things that are really competing, that have the potential to compete with pharmaceuticals, we better cross our T's and
Yeah.
dot our I's and be very thoughtful and careful.
I mean, and the underlying point of all this is, the regulations are not perfect, but they've functioned well enough for the last, 30 years, DSHEA, and there's the 30-year anniversary for DSHEA, Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. And anything that's new that wasn't in the food supply chain before, and this is where the argument would come in. Well, it really was in the food supply chain because you were eating the plant and your body's hydrolyzing that and making that peptide in your body. So it goes to the issue of safety, right? So this is a kind of a gray area. I think is gonna. I see that. Of course, everybody's jumping on the GLP-1 bandwagon, where GNC, I think, and Vitamin Shop are offering supplements to support people who are taking Ozempic, right?
Right. Because
But
it's
what we're not talking about is where how this is going to be regulated as we have more and more therapeutic peptides being developed.
that will be interesting to see where it goes. Yeah. I mean, of course, that's certainly one area, but I still see, like you, I didn't have a chance to see a lot of different booths just because I had to work at one and I did a couple of education sessions, and yeah,
Right,
we did our podcast. But there
right.
is a lot of innovation still taking place, and that's one of the
That
things I like about this show is walking around, and just a little bit that I did walk around, you know, there was some interesting, innovative materials. One of the things that I find more and more out there is when the Post-Biotics, they began a few years back, and I'm seeing, and there was like one or two. Now there's dozens. I mean, you see all these different postbiotics, and many of them with different applications. Um, at
Yeah.
first, it was just kind of the standard immune gut health thing. Now it's all over the board, the things that they are capable of doing. They have
Oh,
human research on.
that's right. And I was the global biotics lead with Sanofi for our group, physical and mental wellness category. So I was screening and identifying strains, whether they're probiotic, postbiotic. We looked at prebiotic, and the research that's being done in the whole microbiome space on biotics as a
Oh
whole
yeah,
is just
it's amazing. That's a
phenomenal.
whole
Yeah,
thing that is
yeah.
just huge.
And I,
So
I, I and I said, speaking of biotics, in fact, it's funny. I was using the term biotics, and I was the biotics lead at Sanofi before the industry started and the trade publication started saying
started calling it that.
biotics, start calling biotics. But to put that umbrella, and I know IPA and others have tried to define what's a postbiotic, and probiotic. There's all these different
Yeah, they have
terms.
different ones. Well, to my mind, I've really heard two different versions of what a postbiotic is. One
Yeah.
is basically a heat-killed or pasteurized
Yeah.
probiotic. So it's dead. It's
It-
like a
it-
zombie. It's a zombie probiotic. It's dead, but it still has a function and does something. And
Right, because you can inactivate a probiotic and it can be reactivated to a probiotic. So that's not a postbiotic. Postbiotic is when you basically kill the
that's okay.
probiotic organism.
You heat treat it so it kills it. It's dead.
Right, exactly.
But it still does stuff because there's studies showing that. Now the other one, the other use of the term postbiotic I've seen is for certain metabolites, things like butyric acid or certain short chain fatty acids. They're saying that's a postbiotic because it's what a probiotic makes. So I've seen that definition as well. And, whichever it is, postbiotics, though, are, I think, here to stay, and there's so much happening with them. And those are pretty cool. And, one of the other areas that our guests were talking about was, functional foods, beverages.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had functional foods or that category for some time now, but maybe I know Jeff Chen from Radical talked about that. He saw as kind of one of those trendy things. There is a lot more in terms of functional beverages, but one thing I haven't investigated, which raised a question for me. I rewatched the show and I was listening to him again, and one question that came up for me was, well, it's not really an issue if you're putting a supplement facts panel on the beverage, right? You know what I mean? So there must be some people that are calling it a functional beverage or putting dietary supplement ingredients and putting the nutrition facts panel. That's a big no-no, especially for claims. You
can't do it that way. But I mean, I used to work for a company that had an herbal tea line, and we specifically chose to put supplement facts on the panel, even though it was a tea. It's medicinal herbs. So we could list the thing, give the information.
I guess from my point of view, in all the years I've done regulatory, I haven't investigated this, but maybe we should check into it. Maybe there are a lot of functional beverages that are kind of positioned as nutrition facts panels, which is not the way to go there. And what is actually a functional beverage? What does that mean really, right? So it's the type of ingredients in there and the benefit it's delivering. Well, making those kind of structure function claims, then of course it needs to be a supplement facts. You're not probably going to put, I see people putting biotics in functional beverages. That's happening, but also like ashwagandha, for example, ginseng. These things have been in functional beverages before, but maybe that's something we should check out and maybe dive deeper into the future show.
Yeah. I think maybe get a couple of regulatory guests to weigh in on that.
Yeah.
But also one of the interesting things that I saw on some of the SPINS data was when you're looking at delivery forms, and this relates to our conversation. One of the areas that had been, sort of the big, huge area of delivery form growth for a number of years was gummies, and gummies have actually started to decline as a delivery form category. Now there are subcategories within gummies that are still growing. But as an overall category, it's been declining. And while at the same time, capsules have started to increase and liquids, including beverages, have started to grow. Yeah. And so that's an interesting development.
In fact, one of the education sessions last year was a prediction the next wave of functional beverages would be in the mental wellness area. And that was a gentleman from Now Foods that was talking about that, I believe. So, for sure, functional beverages are huge. In fact, I was saying that a couple years ago, especially in the mental wellness space. But now we're starting to see those products hit the market now in a big way. But again, hey guys, if you're putting traditional dietary supplement ingredients that you normally do in other dosage forms, and then you're putting that in a beverage, it's still a supplement. Okay, you still need to put...
Even though it's a liquid, it's still a supplement. Use a supplement fats. Yeah. And that's better for you anyway, because you can list all of the ingredients, which you can't do in a nutrition facts box.
Well, think about the whole sports nutrition market, okay? Because there's a lot of focus now for not just professional athletes, but athletes or the weekend warriors, all that kind of thing of products, and I take a lot of those or whatever. But for sure, if you're putting those types of ingredients in a functional beverage like that, you need to call it out as a supplement facts, and then of course you can make structure function claims based on that.
Absolutely,
that's the way to go.
So another interesting area our guest mentioned was about sort of data-driven decision making.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the interesting phenomenons in the consumer market has been that if you look at our generation, Bill, people, the consumers would go to a vitamin store, go to a place, somebody would tell them something, and they, okay, great, I'm going to buy it and try it and whatever. Didn't necessarily read up on it or try to study it further, just, didn't necessarily dig into the data. Whereas now, the younger generation, Gen Z and all, actually looking more for data. They want to see it. They want to be proved because they're a little bit jaded. They see all the stuff on TikTok and every place else, and now they're like, what's true, what's not, and they actually want to. They're the kind of the show me generation, prove it to me. So they want some data, and I appreciate that. My son's one of those. He's a Gen Zer, and he wants to see. My son too. He wants to see what the facts are. He wants to see if it's true. And so I think data-driven decision making is definitely an industry trend, and you see it, and you certainly see it in the raw material market where companies are looking for, show me the data, show me the study, show me the information. I have to see it. I'm not just going to put it in there just because it's the flavor of the month. I've got to have some data.
Yeah. No, it's an exciting time for our industry, really, to see this trend, which I've been pushing and talking for years, is like, okay, we need to go in this direction, guys. We need to be more data driven. We need to do the research on the product as a whole, something Payleen talked about and called out, which was great. So I'm pleased to hear that there are more. And I wrote an article about this years ago for Natural Products Insider in 2014 about the ROI, or return on the investment, for doing clinical research. And so this was in 2014. And then today, 10 years later, right, we're really starting to see the trend now that really take hold, I think is kind of exciting.
For me, I'm very excited because I this week, one of the topics at our company has been, I was asked to put together a budget for research studies for next year, including maybe three pilot studies, 2 larger randomized controlled trials. I mean, I'm like a kid in the candy shop. That was just like awesome. And I said, okay, here's what we're looking at. Here's some of the numbers. And you want to know the best part about that? My budget was approved, man. My budget was approved. I've got a budget next year for doing some real clinical research. I know. It's awesome.
Lucky you. I'd love to work for a company that actually thinks that way.
Listen, it's honestly the first time I've worked for a company that thought that way. So, and that's after 45 years in this business. So I'm happy about it.
Well, and it's not a negative; it's just the nature of the beast. But Sanofi, they're a huge multi-billion-dollar, consumer healthcare pharma type company. They don't really do innovation. Okay, they just acquire brands. Okay, right. They don't really do the innovation, so they got a lot of legacy brands, stuff like that. And I could never get a budget approved for anything to do any research or bring some really cool stuff to market there. So too bad for that. But again, there are a lot of companies doing it, which I'm pleased to see. And that was something that a couple of people said. Michael talked about it. Tom talked about it, about delivery technologies, right? That's another. I see really cool delivery technologies more and more coming out from different folks.
I like the variety of options out there now. I mean, even if you think of tablets, I mean, in addition to your standard tablet, you got chewable tablets, you got fast melts, you've got lozenges, you've got all these different styles. You have effervescent tablets. I mean, that's just tablets. And you've seen all the stuff that's happening with capsules, with the capsule in a capsule. So you could have a oil base, beadlets. Yeah. You're seeing, and those are just solid dose delivery forms. Then you get to the gummies of the world. the oral strips, you have shots, liquids, you have confectionaries where people are taking and putting their stuff in chocolate. I mean, in Japan for years, there's been a chocolate GABA. You can pop those puppies. You better taste good, so you got to be careful how many you take. But
well, and that's something Michael called out. What he looks for at the show, which I thought was great, is that we're this trend of moving towards more nutrient dense options in terms of being able to get more in there. And Tom talked about that as well. Some technology where they can get more of the active ingredient in the dosage form. And this is traditionally a challenge anyway. I'm going to call out something here that just came to me as we're talking about this, because both Jacqueline and Jeff talked about dose finding studies and getting to the right dosage, where like you don't say that it's the same dosage for everybody, regardless of gender, lifestyle, whatever.
That's right. That's right. But we're doing one of those right now. Yeah.
Right. So when you get to a sophisticated data, where we get these data sets, and using AI tech is going to be really cool, then we're going to be able to dial in a more sophisticated way of what a person, based on their lifestyle, whatever, what they particularly need. And then the technology that can deliver that can be a way to do that. So I see a marriage coming between delivery technologies and dose finding studies and finding the sweet spot, depending on what the active ingredient is. That's what I say.
And then so many, not just delivery forms, but as you said, delivery systems, technologies, things, the liposomal things of the world, the SNEDs technology, so many of the other kinds of technologies that are available to improve bioavailability or delivery or whatever.
And these companies are doing the research to support that as well, which is awesome. So another one that stands out for me is the sucrosomial magnesium. And
love that stuff.
Reviewed all the research, and they were able to take magnesium oxide, which is basically insoluble, which has been the traditional magnesium source because you can get more elemental magnesium.
58% elemental magnesium.
Right. But it's insoluble. So how much is really getting to the body? Well, they show clinical data where they're using magnesium oxide in their delivery technology that enables to show the blood volumes of magnesium in the bloodstream and getting to the small intestine, which is kind of key. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the salt is. There's always been this discussion for literally years about the advent of organic salts, natural salts. There's more bioavailable, but nobody's actually cracked the nut on that until I saw this technology where they actually took magnesium oxide and surpassed everything else.
I know. I think it was really brilliant. These sucrose esters. I think it was really brilliant how they use it. Such a small amount too. It's not a huge. It's very small. And the difference. I looked at that one study where they were comparing it to magnesium glycinate, magnesium citrate, several different forms, and outshone everything. And at like 32% elemental magnesium. That's tremendous. Nothing else touches that except for magnesium oxide itself.
No, it's phenomenal. So, and I know the guys at the company that developed that, Lesco out of Italy, and then Maypro is a distributor for them. Yeah, if you're interested in that, check it out. Anyway. So what else, Gene? I think we pretty much covered all the highlights, right?
Well, at least the highlights from our guests and what we said, but not necessarily our personal highlights. We should talk a little bit about that. But there's a couple personal highlights that are worth mentioning. I have something to mention, but I'm particularly excited about your personal highlight. So,
yes. Let's close up the show with some personal highlights. Okay, so we have some cool stuff coming up. Both Gene and I. First, should we tell them that we have a book coming?
Sure. Yeah.
Why not?
So we have a Nutraceuticals book coming, and that's pretty awesome. And we're going to be covering over 120 different nutraceuticals, going through all the science on it. It's going to be a great resource for industry because if the research was done on branded materials, it's going to tell you those branded materials, so you don't have to guess. And everything will be carefully cited and referenced, and it'll give you so much incredible information. So it'll be a magnificent tool for industry as well as for consumers who want to learn more. So that one is exciting, and we have a lot completed on that. Still more to do, but a lot is completed. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that's happening.
That's
Um,
going to be very educational for not, like you said, not just the industry, but end users as well. And the other thing is, I've not been idle in this downtime this last year. I'm still looking for that position in the industry there. But I am developing or launching a new product. And, the number one, I mean, the one thing that's bothered me for years about this industry is, well, one, we weren't focusing on the science as much as we should have, but we're getting there. We're there now. I wouldn't say we're 100% there, but we're definitely moving in that direction. So this is a good trend. But, one thing, and I've talked to other industry leaders about it this last week, at the show and stuff, is that we always talk about it. The Supply Side West is for innovators, really. It's for product brands to see what's the latest ingredients, stuff like that. And Expo, right, is where people launch new products and stuff like that. But where is the end consumer in all of this, right? And Danielle mentioned this. Well, that's what part of the reason they started what they were doing was to get into really targeting the end consumer. So for years, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, Dr. Bell, what do I take for this?" And even though you and I are both subject matter experts, we have a broad spectrum of knowledge. And we don't know everything that's going on, especially now with the trends, with all the latest research. It's impossible to keep up with. So, and there's at least in the U.S. market, probably 100,000 products on the market. So how do you know which product to take?
And not only do we have that, but then we have the extreme difficulty of the influencers of the internet who may not know jack about it, but they're going to say something about how wonderful something is, whether there's science behind it or not. And people go, "Oh, she said this or he said this. I'm going to buy it," and it could be just like the stupidest thing in the world.
It's garbage. Well,
and they don't know.
Somebody did that. It was in the UK, a TikTok influencer touting oat Zempic. I'm not kidding. It went viral. It was getting traction, and people were. And you know what it was? It was 3 ingredients. It was oats, it was lime juice, and I don't remember the third ingredient. It was some food ingredient.
Well, there you go.
Wow, there you go.
The magic weight loss miracle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bogus, guys. Come on. So I'm shifting to become a tech entrepreneur, Gene. I am not going to really focus so much and develop new products with science. I can do that. I've done that dozens of times. But what I want to do is solve the biggest problem in our industry for the end consumer is with a new technology, and I'm bringing to market in Q1 next year, guys, towards the end of Q1. So stay tuned. And that's Nutraselect.ai. I'm leveraging AI technology in a very huge way. I'm so excited about the development we're doing on that. And you're part of that.
I'm very happy to be a scientific advisor on this project.
Yeah.
But I've never seen anything like it. And I got to tell you, in my decades in the industry, nothing like this. I think this will revolutionize the business because people will be able to suddenly look something up and does it work? Here's the science. Does it work? Is it real? What do I take?
Yeah.
Boom. Real science. Nothing. No influencers. No brands saying, "Let me pay you so I can get on the list." None of that.
It's not a pay for play. No, it's based on the science. And I seriously is going to change our industry in so many ways. So 2 things that I'm going to call out that I'm going to make predictions on, which is not really my target, but indirectly is going to affect. And that is, okay, we have all these bad actors in the industry. They've been here for decades. It's not going to change. It's just the nature of opportunists taking advantage of something that's trending. Just use Ozempic and GLP-1 as an example right now, right? Same thing. People are touting products that don't deliver that sort of benefit. To me, that's a crime. I think that's it's wasting consumers millions of dollars on stuff they don't know, but they don't know what they don't know. So I'm going to solve that problem, Gene, in a huge way. The second thing is, there's all this discussion about mandatory product listing, and it's industry split 50-50 in that. Actually, I'm really tired of hearing about mandatory product listing and what the FDA is going to do or not do or whatever. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing in terms of the technology that I'm bringing to the market is actually going to indirectly be a mandatory product listing where every product that's got any science is the only, every product, nothing's going to be left out. But if you don't have the science behind your product and you're fairy dust in a product, it's not going to get a very good rating from our system. And so you guys that are the bad actors, watch out. It's going away.
And you guys who are the good actors, you're going to love this.
You're going to love it, man, because it's going to improve your product, man. And the data we're going to have from the progress tracking on millions of consumers is freaking phenomenal. Okay, so anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Stay tuned for more news.
I do want to bring up while we were at the show.
Yeah.
You had a distinct honor that you were aware was coming, but it came during the show. It was official. So why don't you mention that?
Okay, thanks, Gene. I appreciate that. But I've already posted this out there in LinkedIn and through the network. But
that bears repeating.
Okay, so it's I was selected by Redwood Media that produces all the top 100 magazines to be in the top 100 innovators and entrepreneurs in 2025. So very, very cool. You can find that LinkedIn post. There's actually a link to the article, the interview. You can read the full post or the full interview and kind of my story. But it's kind of cool to get that recognition for, my career, what I've been doing behind the scenes. Not a lot of people know who I am. And you're more well known than I am, Gene, because you've been around longer.
I've been around longer.
You've been around longer. But, certain groups of people know who I am or whatever. But a lot of those people have left the industry now. So a lot of the newer people have been around the last 10, 50 years have no idea what I've been doing behind the scenes for so many years. So for me, it was great validation to get that recognition.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well deserved. And
thank you.
So that was a great thing. I want to mention two very short things that was great for me. One was just a feel good thing. I was doing my my education session on Wednesday morning.
Yes, that was awesome, man.
On the next gen nutraceutical rock stars. And there was space it was a breakfast session, so there was seats for 60 people and at tables. And then there was a few seats in the back. Well, 100 people showed up. And there was more than that even. But 100 people came in the room, standing room only. I was so excited. It was just really awesome.
Very cool.
Being a theater guy from way back, I love an audience, and I had a great audience. And then one of the things I presented there also is something that was exciting to me, and I think it bears mentioning. And in a very large study that we did on, that Nutriland did on the Som Natural phytomelatonin derived from St. John's wort, there was over 1,200 people completed the study, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, and different cohorts within the group. But the four arms were 1 milligram phytomelatonin, 3 milligrams phytomelatonin, 10 milligrams synthetic melatonin, and placebo. And the short version is in 3 of the different cohorts within there's various cohorts, but in 3 of them, there was that 1 milligram or 3 milligrams of phytomelatonin was performed as well as or better than 10 milligrams of synthetic. And to me, that was a huge thing. That was very exciting, and especially in people who had sleep disorders, that was particularly effective there. So I was excited to share that because that's something really
that's
big
really
in the industry.
It really is very cool, and I'd love to hear Jacqueline talk about that too, because she's on your advisory board.
She's on our scientific advisory. She talked a little bit about that. And guys, if you haven't seen that podcast yet from SupplySide, please watch it. It's great. I mean, we're doing our follow-up, wrap-up on it, but you should see the live thing if you haven't yet.
You'll see the whole, we've only touched on some of the comments from last week. Okay, so those are kind of our personal highlights. So let's talk about what's coming, Gene, and wrap it up here. Okay, so our next podcast is going to be another bioactive breakdown.
And what, pray tell, is bioactive breakdown, Bill?
Well,
tell the audience what they've won.
And there's more. It's like the infomercial. And there's more. Or it's on the website
now.
If you order now, or it's a website where it continuously scrolls forever, and it says, "But there's more." No. What was I going to say now?
The bioactive breakdown. What is the bioactive breakdown?
Yeah, the next bioactive breakdown. Okay, cool. So again, we started that last month. We did it on omega fatty acids. What Jeannie and I wanted to do was actually do a deeper dive on the science on a particular ingredient, but then we've extended it now to a particular area. So the next one is going to be on, the title is The Science Revolution and Evolution of Science Being Done on Dietary Supplements. And we've touched on that already today quite a bit. So we have 4 guests that are going to come on for that, which we're excited about. And so stay tuned. That'll probably be in a couple of weeks whenever we can get the scheduling worked out for everybody.
And just so you know, to be clear, this is the show to watch if you've ever thought about doing a study or having a study done on your product, whether it's a raw material, whether it's a finished product. We're going to have 4 people who represent a different type of organization, clinical research, and have different models on how they do it. And you can see some of the different models and what might work well for your product. So you want to see that one.
Oh, no, we're excited about that. So we're definitely going to talk about that. We'll let you guys know. We'll put it out there as soon as it's ready to go. And then what else do we have, Gene? Just kind of a preview for next year's SupplySide. Gene and I are already planning for next year.
Yeah.
And maybe... Well, for sure next year for SupplySide. So one of the 2 things that we're looking at doing, first is, now we did our podcast as live from the press room. However, Gene and I are going to upscale that a little bit and take it up another notch and probably do it from the stage or a session that we're going to do. So
maybe a live audience, and then maybe they can ask some questions.
And maybe like a bioactive breakdown format, I think.
Yeah,
is what
we'll have some guests, and people can ask the guests the questions.
Yeah, exactly. So I know they do that in some of the education sessions, but ours will be really fun because there might be some
ours
singing.
Will be a lot of fun, and we'll be filming it for posterity and being on our podcast.
Yes, so that's coming, and then for sure we're going to have our book we already talked about. It'll be ready before then, but we'll certainly can do it in a big way there at SupplySide. And then of course I have a book coming from my Where Spirit Meets Science. It's titled Quantum Grace: Contemplations for the Spiritual Journey. So I'm planning to do a book signing and launch for that at SupplySide. Because again, Danielle said it, the science and spirituality coming together in our industry, and just makes sense. So that's what's coming, guys. And maybe
a lot of fun stuff.
A lot of fun stuff there. So thanks for joining today. And if you got any questions, reach out to us. Visit the website. You know where to find Gene and I online. And anything else you want to add, Gene?
I think that covered it. Just guys, thanks for your support. Thanks for watching us.
Yes, and
keep watching.
Keep watching. And hey, guys, please share this with everyone. You know, we have people all over the world watching the show, which is very cool. In our audience, I think we had an increase in the last 30 days of almost 60 people following us on the podcast.
That's great. And guys, if you have ideas on what you'd like to see us address on the show, share that with us because we want to hear it.
Yep, that's right. All right. And with that, I'll take us out. There we go.